One thing, maybe a bit more controversial, well, not controversial, but a bit of inside baseball. Because one of the things I saw from you that I wanted to talk to you about, and maybe on camera is not the right place, is that you recently joined the Nelson Nash Institute.
Yep, I did.
Um, the way I watched that video and I was like, Caleb, I think you gave in to bullying. I think you got,
Are you part of the IBC Institute?
I was a part of the Nelson Nash Institute until
Yep.
they kicked me out
Oh wow.
for
Why
something
did
that
they?
it was something that had nothing to do with infinite banking. It was basically, basically they got hold of some advertising copy. For I had two businesses at the time. Okay, I had my infinite banking business and I had an investment newsletter that I was
Okay.
running, but two separate businesses, right? And I went in, passed the test, became a member, right? And then some of the advertising copy that I had submitted to a show that the person who ran the show knew Bob Murphy, who was one of the, at that time, one of the leaders of the Nelson Nash Institute, sent it to him and said, "Hey, what do you think about this? Right, this advertising copy, right?" And Bob Murphy sent me one of the most unprofessional emails I've ever gotten, which started with a totally knee-jerk emotional reaction. Quite frankly, he, and I'm going to name names because they deserve it, and Carlos Lara and David Stearns behaved like a bunch of bullies, and we're like, "You're done. We're furious. We can't have this." And I'm like, "This has nothing to do with the infinite banking concept. This is a totally separate business. And by the way, this hasn't published yet. If you want me to adjust it, I
No,
can
no,
adjust
please.
it." But
It's
I was like,
yeah, no, no. I
but
think
hold on. But here's the thing. Let me finish. The story's not over. I'm like,
yeah,
can we talk about this? Like, let's adjudicate this. Can we have a conversation? Because I'm willing to adjust the advertising copy. Like, I don't want to jeopardize my relationship with you
yeah,
or the Nelson Nash Institute. So if you want me to adjust the advertising copy for this totally separate business that I have, I can do that. And it was just like, nine. Das ist verboten. You're out. They at least had the decency to give me back my money because they had to admit I had never violated any of their rules. It wasn't
yeah,
like I was selling IULs. I wasn't like violating anything that they had told
yeah,
me, right?
yeah,
So I have some experience there, and I think it's sad because there's a huge opportunity to support infinite banking agents. Unfortunately, what the Nelson Nash Institute has become is a compliance department. That's basically what they are. Their goal is to A, promote the legacy of Nelson Nash. Fine, I have no problem with that. That's
yeah,
great. That's great. And B, control the narrative with infinite banking, right? So when you join the Nelson Nash Institute, now I don't think this will happen with you because the thing with compliance departments is big time producers seem to be able to get away with things that small time producers cannot. So you I'm sure will be fine. You I'm sure will be fine. But is they're a compliance department and there are both written and unwritten rules.
yeah,
And if you violate one of those written or unwritten rules, there are going to be consequences.
yeah,
And the whole ethos of stamping on your email, "I am officially authorized," like that is so opposed to independent thinking, to entrepreneurialism, to everything that we're supposed to be about.
yeah,
Now we're going to go and look for approval from some
yeah,
third party.
yeah,
You can't be an independent, thinker and do that.
yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot to unpack here. This will definitely be a juicy episode for sure.
We can do a whole follow-up episode on it.
Here's what I'll say. I'm sorry that you had that experience, and
Yeah, and I'll say too, it was traumatic at the time
yeah,
because I was brand new in the business. I
yeah,
didn't know anybody. I had made no money. I thought these people were my friends. Like I'm expecting to get attacked from the
yeah,
outside, but getting attacked from the inside is a
yeah.
lot more
I think,
painful.
and any time that so I'm gonna try to play both sides, but I think it's gonna be helpful. So I think David Stearns and the institution has that it's set up, and there's friction as it's set up because you have people in the institute that are a lot more well known, have a lot more respect than you, that feel very I won't say threatened, but feel very offended when people do certain things. And so they're, pressuring to say like this is unacceptable and all these things. And so I'm very empathetic to the situation that they're put in. I personally know people that have been turned off, have situations like that, have gotten letters. And I think I said this on my conversation with Chris Noggle, is um I don't, I'm with you on the fact that I don't want to, like, I don't personally have that stamp of approval on my email. Nothing is changing, period. I became a practitioner because I want to be a unifier. And there's like, I have an event every year.
Unity at gunpoint is what that means, though.
Well,
That's
yeah,
what it means. Unity
yeah,
at
but no.
gunpoint.
It's the, hey, listen, like I pay for software. I'll pretty much, if anyone has a book or software in our space, I will pay to buy books or software to support. But ultimately, it's not that you asked me, do I use any software with clients? The answer is no. Why do I own all this software? It's because it's like, hey, I want to support and connect and amplify people that are in the space. And so just to answer your question, love Nelson Nash, love the idea of the legacy. I'm against the concept of like, we're going to come after you if we perceive that you using trademarks. I personally not a fan of that, because it feels very much of like, are we going to inspire people, or are we going to, it's like freedom of speech is my number one issue. There's a lot of things
Or
that
are
could
we
go
going to play
around.
whack-a-mole?
Yeah,
Like, oh,
but
this
freedom
guy,
of
don't say
speech,
that. Don't say that. Don't say that.
yeah,
Right.
but and freedom of speech, like freedom of speech is ugly, because if you think about it, if you believe in freedom of speech, you need to be okay with speech that you don't like. It's not just freedom of speech until I don't like it. And so again, they don't need to, they're not the US government, like they don't need to have freedom of speech, but I'm just saying like that's something that I value, and I would much rather say like, hey, we want to create the standard and inspire versus like come after people.
Right.
And
Right.
if I get a letter someday, or if I get kicked out, it will be what it will be. But
You won't
the
get
thing
kicked
that
out.
I
You're too big.
wanted to do is like, I signed up for becoming a practitioner for like years ago. I just never took the test because I hate taking tests. And so was I bullied in like taking the test? Yes. Do I have any regrets? No, because I'm grateful that I just like did it. But I don't think anything will change, and you will for sure never hear me be like, you are superior if you're a practitioner versus not,
Right.
because I
Right.
see it. This is how I almost see it, is I see it as a Nelson Nash support club.
Which is fine if they were honest about that. Like
Right.
if they just said, look, I am Nelson Nash's son-in-law and I am here to support and promote his legacy. That's a very honorable thing to do. And I have no problem with
Right.
that. I think that's phenomenal. Just be honest about it. Don't
Right.
say we're here to promote the infinite banking concept and we're here to help and support our infinite banking practitioners, when in fact you're not. Right. What you're actually doing is you're promoting Nelson Nash in a kind of cultish way, quite frankly, where you turn him into a demigod and you turn becoming your own banker into scripture instead of what it
Yeah.
is. Right. And so, unfortunately, what happens is it becomes harder for us to make progress when they cannot admit that, you know what, Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash, it's not gospel. It's a phenomenal book. I
Yep.
recommend to all my clients to read it.
Yep.
It's not the end all be all.
Yep.
And quoting Nelson Nash or quoting Becoming Your Own Banker is not the same as making an actual intellectual argument, right?
Yep.
And if
Yep.
someone makes an actual intellectual argument that doesn't happen to be found within the pages of Becoming Your Own Banker,
Yep.
that's not grounds for dismissing it,
Yep.
right?
I agree
And
with that.
I like that you brought up the trademark, because to me, there's a very whether you like it or not, I'm going to use a word that might trigger some people, but whatever. Whether you like it or not, there's a very libertarian impulse that flows throughout the infinite banking
Yeah,
community.
for sure.
Okay.
Yep.
And if you haven't read Stefan Kinsella Against Intellectual Property and you're a libertarian, you should probably read that, because one of the most anti-libertarian things you can do is to trademark something, right? Where you're basically saying, I now have a monopoly on this idea and you're not allowed to use it without paying me some, some money, right? Some what's the word I'm looking for? Ransom isn't the word. I can't think of the word. It was some kickback. That's not the word I was looking for. But yeah, so they seem to be very controlling, which is sort of the antithesis of
Yep.
being a libertarian. At least Bob Murphy is, he is pretty much an anarcho-capitalist, a libertarian, right? And I think most of the guys there probably have libertarian tendencies. Yet, in the way that they run their little club, we could go deeper into this, but unfortunately, it seems to me to be a religious cult.
Right.
Uh,
Here's what I'll say is there will be there's lots of
and
there's
I'll just add, just
yeah,
before I do want to add, like it sounds like I'm negative on them. I'm actually positive on them because they do end up promoting the infinite banking concept.
yeah,
There's other things mixed in there. There's other baggage that I'm not
yeah,
on board with. And I personally was treated in an unjust manner. That's not debatable. But um,
yeah,
I'm not against the Nelson Nash Institute per se.
yeah. If I were to consult, and no one has ever asked me to date about my opinions, so I haven't I haven't reached out. But I would say I do believe that there is a desire to do the right thing. I don't believe that the desire is to be what you've talked about is to be cultish and like to try to like control. I do believe that the desire is pure, and I just think that anytime you're trying to go after people using the letter of the law, it just goes like you can do one of two things. You can send a letter or you can inspire. And for me, I'll just say this. There are people that use our books, that
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
concepts that we've come up with,
Yeah.
and I have not lost an ounce of sleep because I know that there's nothing new under the sun.
And like
Nothing new
Chris
under the
Noggle
sun.
said, it's actually flattering to you. It's a backhanded compliment to
Right,
you.
right. And we're like, and so the goal is, and that's another thing. It's like in the whole defamation thing, and maybe this will not age well, but it's like I just don't get the whole idea of like hiding behind lawsuits of like, hey, you defame. It's like, well, let's talk about it. Let's like where did I go wrong? And then it's like, no, I don't want to talk about it. I'm just gonna. It's we got to be careful. And I'm not saying there's nothing. I'm not referencing the IBC Institute when I talk
Right,
about
right,
defamation. I'm just
right.
talking about there's been other people that I've experienced that it's maybe easy to hide behind the letter of the law. What I'll say, and this is just in summary, is the IBC institution is far from perfect. I do believe that they're trying to make strides, and my hope will be that as they get more feedback, they'll be like, hey, what we're gonna do is these are the values that we're gonna go after, and I will be involved with the organization as long as they let me. But I also am never going to waver on what I believe and what I say. And if that becomes an issue, then I would much rather them kick me out than for me to change my message. And that's the thing that I guess I want to leave you with is for me, that is the essence of a free man, is to be able to say what you think whenever you want. And again, going back to like the thing that I care most about in this country is freedom of speech. It's very problematic that there are parties on both sides that like freedom of speech when it's convenient for them, but then want to censor speech. And I'm saying we should allow some of the worst speech that you can imagine possible for the essence of keeping freedom of speech, because freedom of speech is so important that we might have to hear some ugly things. But I believe that supply and demand or the market will decide. If you are saying bad things, your business should suffer. You should get called out. You should get exposed because you're saying incorrect things. I think that might be an interesting avenue to go versus being like, hey, we're not going to say anything, but we're going to like try to censor you or deplatform you. I think it's a very I think it's a very dangerous route from a country standpoint. And then as it relates to business and organizations that I want to be part of, obviously I like that value, but it's not the US government. So we could probably have a part two. You can decide if you want to
Yes,
keep this
we
in
we
or
will
keep this
have
out.
a part. We will 100% have a part
Yeah.
two. Absolutely, Caleb. This has been phenomenal. Everything I could have wanted and more, and I can't wait for part two. Thank you
Okay.
so much, Caleb Guilliams. Greatly appreciate you being on the program.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much, Logan.